Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be doing this makeup look, a full face using some of my recent favorite products as well as some of my recent favorite techniques for makeup. So if you'd like to see everything that I use, my thoughts on everything and how I put this look together, just keep on watching. All right, I know I used the Dior Backstage foundation and concealer pretty recently in a video, but I wanted to use it again because I've just been enjoying it so much. But I wanted to try something a little bit different with it. So I'm going to be mixing these actually with glowier products. I have glowy stuff going on already on my face. So on top of my skincare, I did a combination of the Auric Glow Lust and the By Terry Brightening CC Serum in the white shade. I think it's called Immaculate Light. So I just mixed those together and put those all over my face. But I'm also going to be using either one or both of them for mixing with my foundation and concealer as well. So I'm going to take the By Terry first and just get a little pump of that in there. The By Terry is a little bit pigmented, so my hope is that it's actually going to just lighten up that Dior foundation just a tiny touch. I think it's a very good shade match for me, but it's not perfect. I noticed when I was watching back the footage on the video where I applied this for the first time on camera, it's maybe not even a half a shade too dark for me, maybe only like a quarter shade too dark for me, so it matches pretty well. But I just wanted to try just lightening up the shade a tiny little bit, and by adding that glowy product into it, I didn't put the Auric in this one, I just did the By Terry. By adding that in, it also kind of shears out the foundation a little bit. I don't find it looks heavy, but I do find that it could look a little bit more natural, kind of light, if it's sheared out a little bit. I consider it to be a solid medium coverage on its own when it's not mixed with anything, especially if you're combining it with concealer. All right, so there's the foundation on. It's looking nice and glowy. I'm going to take some of the concealer again onto the back of my hand. I didn't mention in my previous video, the applicator is actually a little brush on this. I don't think it makes too much of a difference for me. I take some of the Glow Lust now and mix that in. I just used probably about 1/3 to 1/2 a pump of the Glow Lust. Mixing that with the concealer. I forgot I wanted to do brows before I blend the concealer, so I'm going to be using this little Anastasia brow pencil. I just got this as a sample from Sephora. I have the shade dark brown here, and I'm just going to quickly brush up my brows and then draw in mainly just where there's sparsity, which is kind of the outer half of my brows. And then really lightly pull it over the rest just so it all looks like the same color, and a little bit right on the inside of the brow. Taking my Real Techniques setting brush to blend the concealer mixture. Now I'm just going to take the concealer not mixed with anything just to add a little bit more coverage just in those specific areas. Just taking my sponge to make sure everything is all blended with no streaks. I just really like the way these Dior Backstage products make my skin look, even really close up here in natural light, which is usually the most unforgiving for my skin. It just looks really smooth, and you can't detect the makeup as something separate from the skin. I'm going to continue with trying to just lighten and brighten up just a little bit, and using my Fenty Soft Matte Powder Foundation Designer Pro Brush from Sonia G. Just going to set a little bit on the nose, under the eyes, I mentioned in the first video where I used these two Dior products that they were kind of self-setting and I didn't really need powder for them. But now that I've mixed them both with other products, with the Glow Lust and the By Terry, I don't think they would set down on their own. So it is a little bit more important and necessary for me to powder this time. The Dior foundation and concealer I also have found have worn really well. It's the kind of foundation that I can go to when I want that higher coverage. As I said, I think it's solid medium coverage, and when I want it to wear all day. I just want to feel comfortable and confident that my makeup is going to last and remain covering everything that I wanted covered for the whole day. That's going to be a real go-to for me. And what I've been enjoying doing with my brows to finish them off when I just use that pencil like I showed you, I like to then go in with the Brow Freeze from Anastasia and just kind of slick them up a little bit. So I try not to use too much. And I just take it into the spoolie and then brush it through my brows in the direction that I want them to sit. I wanted to use a little bit of cream contour today, so I'm going to use my Westman Atelier Biscuit. I'm taking that on the Katie Jane Hughes Spectrum 08 brush. I picked up a little bit too much product, I think, so I'm just going to tap it on both cheeks before I start blending it. Taking the contour on the number 12 brush for my lips. I really feel like this is the best cream contour I've ever tried, definitely. At least for my skin tone, and they've brought it out in a couple of other tones now, but it's just a really good tone. It's definitely contouring, but it's not too cool. Like, it definitely has gray and purpley kind of tones in it, but it doesn't look super gray on the skin. It just adds a really natural looking shadow, I think, and it's so easy to blend and just really easy to work with. It's a really good staple product to have if you like to do any kind of contouring, but in a really natural way. For bronzer, I've really been loving my Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Fair. It's in my project pan. You can see I've hit pan on it, which is great. And I think especially because my skin is so pale right now, this is really the time of year that it's absolute palest. And this is the palest bronzer that I have, and one of the palest bronzers I think you can get. And I just love how buildable it is. So it goes on very sheer at the beginning. You can get just the lightest little bit of color and warmth onto the skin. It just even adds a little bit of contouring on its own as well. But I just think it's, again, so easy to use, so easy to work with, and it looks really lovely and believable on the skin. I can leave it like that, or I can go in with a little bit of a darker bronzer just to further kind of shape and sculpt out the face, and I'm going to do that today with my Gucci bronzer in the shade Fair. This is also a Project Pan item for me, and I've actually been enjoying it quite a lot and loving combining it with that Charlotte Tilbury as well for just a little bit of added depth. I found when I put this on a more yellowy base, so I would consider the Dior foundation and concealer a little bit more on the yellowy side, this works a lot better for me. It doesn't turn orange like it does if I use it on a kind of cooler pinky toned base. This brush, I should mention, has also been a big favorite lately. It's the number 5 brush from the Katie Jane Hughes Spectrum collection. It's super soft. It's synthetic fiber, so you can use it with creams or powders. I've just been loving it with my powder bronzers lately. I like the size of it, and I think the shape is really good for doing a little bit more of that sculpting, but it also is fluffy enough to really blend out and diffuse the product. I'm going to apply a little blush to start, and I think I'm just going to use that same number 5 brush, just wipe it off and make sure there's no bronzer on it. And I'm going to go into the Dior Rosy Glow blush. It's kind of a cult classic at this point, but I only just bought it I was aware of it when it was first kind of making the rounds and people were loving it, but I didn't buy it then. It's had a resurgence lately, I think, mainly because of TikTok, but a lot of people have been talking about it again, and it was out of stock for quite a while, but it came back in stock recently on Sephora Canada, so I bought it and I've really been enjoying it. It's a unique color. Look how blue it looks, but it's, again, it's quite sheer, so it doesn't just look like that on the skin, but it just kind of cools things off a little bit. Gives that really fun kind of bubblegum effect. So I may have to add another blush to warm things up after I do my eyes. I'm gonna have to see how everything comes together. But what I want to do now is go and do my hair, and then I'll come back and we'll do the eyes and lips and just kind of finish everything up. So for eyes, I'm gonna go into my Natasha Denona Metropolis palette. Now I have some shades from other palettes mixed in with this, so I will list all the shade names. I think all the ones I want to use today are actually from Metropolis, but in case they're not, I'll list all the shade names anyway. The first one I'm going to go into is this shade right here. I wanted to do this look because it's kind of my go-to everyday metallic easy eye. I do this with lots of different eyeshadows and so on. I'm just showing you one example of how I would do it, but the method is basically the same regardless of which shadows I'm using. So I start out with a kind of mid-toned metallic shade. That's going to be the main focus, the main color that's coming through. And so this one right here is perfect for this. I've worn very similar looks to this in recent videos. The one where I did the Victoria Beckham Posh glosses, I wore a look like this. I used Victoria Beckham Honey Lid Luster as my main shade for that. And then I also had a video recently, I think it was the latest new and upcoming makeup releases video that I did, where I basically did the same look but just using shades from the Natasha Denona Bronze palette. So I'm putting that shade all over my lid. I'm using my soft shader brush from Sonia G to place that. It's very good with metallics because it's a dense shader brush, so it's good at picking up those types of textures. But I do want to blend around the edges a little bit, so I'm going to use my mini booster from Sonia G just to soften the edges, blending all the way up to the brow bone, but the color is really getting nice and diffused, so it's not too dark in that area. And then if I want a little bit more drama from the look, I just blend into the inner part of the eye as well, just to add the impression of kind of a smokier, more dramatic eye. Next, I'm going in with this shade right here. So usually after I put that kind of mid-tone metallic all over the eye, I then like to go in with a brighter metallic for accent. So I'm going to use that shade. It's kind of a beigey, taupey metallic. Just taking it on my finger, putting it on the center of the eye and just kind of blending up a little bit. And then I like to take a blending brush and just kind of blend around the edges so there aren't any lines there. Now in my other looks, I haven't added another metallic on top, but both of the metallics I've used so far today are really quite smooth metallics, so they're not chunky in any way. Some of Natasha's metallics are more like this, and some of them are a little bit more dimensional and have different size shimmer particles in them, and will just give a more dimensional effect to the eye. So I'm going to take a third shadow, which is this one right here. This is definitely not from the Metropolis palette. This is one of the shades from the Retro palette. I'm pretty sure it's the shade Glitz, but it has a little bit more kind of dimension and brightness to it. So I'm just going to tap a little bit of that right over the center of the lighter metallic that I had already put on there, just to add a little bit more light reflection and something that's going to catch the light in different ways. I'm going to take that same pinky shade right up to the brow bone. Right on the brow bone, I should say. And I'm also going to put that in my inner corner, I think, just to add a little bit of brightness there. can really see the gold shift in that Glitz shade when it's blended in that way. And for the lower lash line, I typically go with light to mid-toned matte. Just keep it pretty simple on most of the lower lash line. Looking at this palette, I think my best bet is going to be this one. I know it looks pretty dark, but I think that's a cream to powder shade, so those tend to show up a lot lighter than they look in the pan, so I think it'll be okay. Just pulling it along the lower lash line. It might be, it's a little dark, but I think it's okay. I'm gonna go back into that pink shade, just kind of pulling it along the inner third of the lower lash line on top of that matte, just to lighten it and soften up that color a little bit more. And then I typically like to go with a darker shade right on the outer corner of the lower lash line. I'm gonna use this brown matte right here. And I like to kind of pull that up to the outer corner of the lid as well. All right, now I'm going to do liner. I'm going to use my Victoria Beckham Cocoa Liner on my upper waterline and along the lash line. And then I'm going to come back and show you my current favorite mascara. So my current favorite mascara is the L'Oreal Lash Paradise in the shade Black Brown. So it's not quite a black, but it is a very, very dark brown. And if you didn't know it was brown, you might just think it was black. But it just gives a slightly softer effect than a real jet black type of mascara. The wand is quite big and fluffy, which is not always my favorite, but which does tend to give the most dramatic, impactful lashes. And this is no exception. I'm gonna go right in with this. So quite a difference looking at the eye with mascara versus without. Tiny little bit on my lower lashes. And although it can be hard to get into like this area of your lashes with a larger wand like this, I find it makes it a lot easier if you just kind of flip the wand and just use the end of it to get into those lashes. So this is by no means a new product. It's been on the market for ages, but I just think it gives such an immediate impact. If you want dramatic, nice, fluffy, almost kind of retro looking, I always feel like I have a little bit of a 60s vibe if I'm wearing this mascara because it's so full and voluminous and lengthening at the same time. Just gives kind of a retro vibe to me for some reason. But it's just so quick and easy, and you only really have to use one coat to get a really good impact from it. And I also enjoy the color. I like having that little bit of a softer option with the black brown shade. Reevaluating the cheeks, I think I will add a little bit of warmth, so I'm going to go in with my other Dior Backstage blush. This is the shade Coral, which is much warmer than the pink shade I used, but I love how these two shades work together. I've really been enjoying combining them lately to give a nice balanced but still really vibrant blush look. The two colors work together so well because they do balance each other out. One is quite warm, one is very cool, so they just kind of work together to create a really nice effect on the cheeks. I'm just realizing this is a very Dior heavy video. I'm just enjoying so many of their products right now. I'm going to go in with another one, the Pink Glow highlighter from Dior. Just kind of buff it into the cheekbone and a little bit onto the apples of the cheeks too. A little bit on the Cupid's bow, a little bit on the brow bone. Then I like to go back with my blush brush, nothing else on it, but just kind of reinforce that blush color. Now for lips, I'm going to use another one that I've used pretty recently on my channel, but I just can't stop using this one. I'm going to be using my Merit lipstick in Baby. I do want to also mention the Posh Gloss, specifically the one in Bikini. I've been wearing all three of them that I have now. I have the clear, this bikini one, and then Tan Line is the warmer counterpart to bikini. But I've been wearing bikini and clear more than Tan Line. I've just been kind of feeling the slightly cooler makeup vibe lately, especially on the lips. I've been really enjoying wearing slightly kind of mauvier, cooler, still pretty neutral tones. I can't go too cool. That just doesn't work for me. Just feel like there's a bit of an elegance from a slightly cooler tone on the lips that I'm really enjoying these days. So going right in with Baby. I don't find any need whatsoever for a lip liner with this lipstick. I think it's just perfect on its own. I don't want to add a different color in for a lip liner either because I don't really want to alter the shade. I just love how it is on its own. And I think there's something very elegant about the finish of this lipstick as well. I just think everything about it is just perfect. I don't really have anything new to say about it that I didn't say in the first video where I used this. So I will link that video in case you want to see my more complete thoughts and kind of how I think of this lipstick. My thoughts haven't changed on it basically, unless it's just that I love it even more than I did then. It's really been my everyday go-to lip color. And if I'm not wearing that, I'm usually wearing the bikini gloss from Victoria Beckham. I'll show you swatches of the two colors because they're definitely both in that cooler neutral kind of pale nude family. You can see they both have that muted quality, but they're not too muted. Really just stunningly balanced, cooler toned shades. So this is the completed look. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any questions or comments below. I always love to see those. And if you'd like to see more from me and you haven't subscribed to my channel already, I would really love for you to do so. Thanks again so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.